The roundabout. The autumn leaves crunched beneath Emma's boots as she made her way home from school, her backpack swinging heavily against her back. The air was crisp, and the sky was painted in shades of gray, promising a storm. She'd taken this route 1,000 times, but today, something felt off. A shiver whispered down her spine, and she glanced around, feeling as if someone were watching her. Shaking off the sensation, she picked up her pace. As she walked, she spotted a roundabout that she'd never seen before. It was tucked away at the edge of a twisted path lined with skeletal trees, their branches reaching like bony fingers. An old sign hung crookedly, faded letters spelling, South End. She paused. Had this always been here? A familiar itch of curiosity nagged at her. Without thinking, she stepped onto the road and entered the roundabout. It was eerily silent, and the air felt thick, almost suffocating. In the center stood a crumbling statue of a girl, her eyes cast downward, her expression frozen in despair. Emma felt an overwhelming compulsion to touch it. As her fingers brushed against the cold stone, the world around her rippled like a pebble disturbing a still pond. Suddenly, she was no longer in the roundabout. The air was warmer, filled with the smell of popcorn and laughter echoing through the streets. She stood in a bustling carnival, bright lights flickering against the twilight. Confused, she turned to see a group of friends from school waving her over, their smiles wide and genuine. "Emma, come on, the Ferris wheel is about to start," they cried. Relief flooded her. They seemed so happy, so real. But a gnawing sense of unease settled in her stomach. This wasn't right. Where was the roundabout? As she joined her friends, she tried to shake off her worries. Riding the Ferris wheel, she felt the rush of wind in her hair, but as the wheel ascended, she looked down and gasped. The carnival ground twisted and distorted below, morphing into her town, but all wrong. Buildings were in the wrong places, streets merged into one another, and an ominous fog seemed to cover everything. Heart racing, she turned to her friends, but their faces were now void of emotion, their eyes vacant, like those of marionettes. They simply stared ahead, forever grinning in a way that made Emma's stomach churn. "Help!" Emma shouted, but no one responded. She was trapped in this twisted carnival, her friends mere puppets in this macabre play. With a surge of panic, she bolted from the Ferris wheel as it came to a stop. Rushing through the fairgrounds, eerie whispers brushed against her ears, drawing her deeper into the carnival's chaos. The laughter she once heard now morphed into dissonant notes, a haunting melody that clawed at her sanity. Desperate to escape, she stumbled through a throng of visitors, but they turned to her, faces contoured in grotesque masks, tongues flickering like flames. She backed away, her heart pounding in her chest, but no exit was in sight. "Emma," a voice broke through the cacophony. She spun around to see her friend Sophie waving. "Over here." Relief washed over her. "Sophie, you have to help me." Emma ran towards her. But as she approached, Sophie's face twisted, slowly morphing into the ghastly visage of the statue from the roundabout. "You shouldn't have come here," she said with a voice that was no longer human. "This is your world now." Turning on her heel, Emma sprinted, searching for the roundabout, crying for help. Each turn she took only led her deeper into a surreal maze of warped attractions, oddities, and nightmarish figures that embodied her worst fears. Finally, she saw it. The roundabout, standing alone amid a swirling fog. She dashed towards it, feeling the tether of reality pulling her back. As she reached out toward the statue, the ground began to tremble. A voice reverberated through the air, mocking her efforts. "You can never leave." With all her strength, Emma pressed her palm against the stone. The world around her screamed in discordant chaos, but she focused on the image of home. The smell of baked goods from the kitchen, the sound of her mother calling her for dinner, the warmth of her own bed. With a forceful surge of will, she whispered, "I want to go home." Everything imploded around her, a kaleidoscope of sound and light. Emma blinked once, and it was quiet again. She stood on the sidewalk, illuminated by streetlights, the roundabout gone. Just a smooth path in the center of an empty street. It was as if it had never existed. Shakily, she turned and walked home, heart racing. Beneath the surface, she knew she had escaped, but the whisper followed her, a promise of the alternate reality that waited just beyond the edges of her familiar world. And deep down, she understood. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed.